Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, gays, guys, gals, theys, thems, and everyone in between. Hello, how you doing?
How are we doing? I feel like I need to bring pep this week. For the last 2 weeks in a row, I was either like, I'm exhausted or like, I'm hungover. And then eventually there's going to be one that I can't make and it'll sound like I just died. So I need to bring pep this time. Pep!
You know what? I think that if we need a peppy Alasdair, this is a pretty good episode to fall onto in the week that we want to be peppy, because my God, it's a corker.
It is a corker. It's one that I'm so familiar with, though, that it's quite difficult to almost see it with fresh eyes. I
know.
Had it on the TV while I was cooking. My boyfriend was watching it. And I didn't even need to look. I knew exactly what was going to happen next at every single point. There was no twists and no turns for me because I know this one so well.
I feel like most of series, to be fair, most of series like 1 to 4 are like that for me. But there's a couple episodes in this series, like I think Father's Day, Rose, and like this episode, this whole two-parter. I'm like, I know everything that's going to happen before it happens.
I know more than you. Me shouting at the TV.
Oh.
Anyway, so hello, I'm Alasdair. We should introduce ourselves.
I'm Sam.
And we make up Wholala, a Doctor Who podcast. And if you haven't guessed already, this week we're looking at episode 12 of series 1, which is Bad Wolf.
Bad Wolf. I know we normally split our sort of two-parters in together in one episode, but I just think there's too much to cover this week. There's too much. We've got to do it over 2 weeks.
There's too much good, juicy content this week, and it feels like there's a lot of distinct things that we can cover in both. And also it just feels like we need to honour the finale, really, by allowing space for each part of this very special occasion to breathe.
There's a lot of spaceships we need to fit into this episode, Alasdair.
Oh, a shocking number, and they were all hidden by a mysterious signal.
The Bad Wolf Corporation struck again.
Oh, who's working there? Not I.
Elaine the Pain.
Oh, she is actually. She's on the payroll.
She's on the payroll. Do you know what? It's actually really lovely seeing her in like, because I feel like I think Tracy Beaker was really sort of kicking off at that time. And I don't know, bless her, I've not really followed her career. I don't think she's done like any hugely notable things beyond, because she was so typecast as Elaine the Pain. And I'm so glad she had this in just before that really got big, because she's a bad ass in this episode.
She's excellent in this. She's so good.
Mm-hmm. So this episode, it aired on the 11th of June 2005, and as per loads of other episodes in this series, it was written by Russell T Davies and directed by Joe Ahern. Joe, as we know, has directed Dalek and Father's Day, Boomtown, and then this two-parter finale.
Yes. And this actually had one of the lowest viewing figures of the series, which surprised me. This came in at 6.81 million viewers.
Really?
Yeah, and viewers was a much more important metric back then, overnight viewers, because the way we all consumed TV was so different back then. This is probably when Red Button was starting to come in, and we had like the +1 channels and some repeats on BBC Three, but certainly no iPlayer.
No, exactly. And so it really did matter, obviously, when you're watching it on the night.
But despite that, one of the highest ratings for the series, one of the highest audience appreciation scores, and one of the highest IMDb ratings, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm. No, honestly, I think that, I don't know, maybe it's that I love, like in series 3, when the third to last episode of a series, it's sort of its own adventure, but then it leads into what the finale is. So they did the same in series 4 with Turn Left. Like it's its own sort of compartmentalized episode. I wouldn't call it like a 3-parter, but it then leads into it. Whereas in this, in series 1 and 2, I feel like the episode before the finale was like so its own thing that it didn't really hype people up enough. I feel like it was a great episode, but people sort of needed hyping up, being like, okay, we're nearly there, like it's all coming to a head. Alasdair, do you want to give us a little summary of the episode?
Yes, if you're not lucky enough to remember this episode, and I'm really quite shocked, I think even the casual fans will remember this two-parter with a little nudge. I'll talk you through it so you know what we're talking about today. The Doctor, Rose, and Jack wake up to find themselves with temporary amnesia in mid-noughties TV game shows, but the games are more lethal than they first appear. On board the game station, losing players with the weakest link and Big Brother get instantly disintegrated. On What Not to Wear, participants undergo brutal cosmetic surgery and have their face off, literally. The Doctor escapes Big Brother with a housemate called Linda with a Y and regroups with Jack. The year is 200,100, and the game station is in fact Satellite 5, 100 years after the events of the Long Game, now under the control of the Bad Wolf Corporation. It turns out that on his last visit, the Doctor's interference caused the government and economy to collapse. The three search for Rose and find her just as she loses the final round of The Weakest Link and is promptly disintegrated by the Anne Droid. The surviving team travel to the control room on floor 500, still not made of gold, and meet the controller, a cybernetic human. Under the cover of a solar flare, she reveals that she brought the Doctor and the companions into the games, hiding them there where her masters won't watch them. The flare ends before she can tell the Doctor who's controlling her, and in a delightful twist, Jack discovers that players aren't disintegrated, but sent somewhere else in space. At this moment, Rose wakes up surrounded by the Daleks. The Doctor and Jack discover a signal coming from the station that's hiding something at the edge of the solar system. A fleet of Dalek spaceships, thousands of them. The Doctor confronts the Daleks, refusing to back down, vowing to rescue Rose and wipe every last stinking Dalek out of the sky.
Ooh, the drama in the pageant. They are ramping it up.
Drama, honey.
Also, straight off the rewatch, what did you think of this episode? I know there's no huge surprises. We watched it so many times, but what did you think?
Oh, I know it so well. I mean, I saw someone put a little clip on Twitter of the opening with the Doctor in the diary room in the Big Brother house. And it just had me itching to watch this one because it's so fucking camp and it's so funny and it's so well done. And yeah, I adore this. It gets such a good balance of actually quite like a dark comedy aspect to it. There's like the political, satirical element to it. There's the Daleks, you can't really go wrong with them. And we've kind of built up towards the real threat that they present this time. It's great.
I think that this season, it sort of really laid the groundwork for what would follow in later seasons, where each episode, or maybe the two-parter, are their own, like, individually, like, unique stories, but they're all teasing something for the finale. And I think it's been really interesting properly rewatching the whole season now, because when I was a kid, I was just like, oh, they've all kept saying Bad Wolf, and then at the end we find out that it's, you know, Bad Wolf. That's what is leading them all there. And I kind of only really took that as like the lead up to it. But then having watched them all now with a bit of an older eye, you can really see how, you know, the groundwork in Dalek really sets up the threat for the big bad of the season. You see the Doctor sort of having a go at Rose or telling off Adam for like making mistakes, and then you see that maybe he's liable to make mistakes of his own and the consequences that have. You see the actions of Rose when she met her dad that really shaped her in a way that affected what she did in this finale, and it really helped her guide Jackie. Not to jump forward too quickly, but I think that this whole season, really leading up to these two episodes, laid the groundwork so well for then what would follow in later seasons with teasing, you know, Torchwood and Howard Saxon and Something Beyond on His Back. And I think that just does such it's just so good.
Yes. I love the build up we got to the Bad Wolf reveal. There was a great website, I'm sure you would have been on it, which was badwolf.org.uk.
Oh, I'm sure I was.
It was divided up into, it still exists. You can see the archive version of it. It was published in June 2005. And there's clues in case you missed them, but there's also theories on the page, which is really interesting because obviously this is an official Doctor Who page.
Yeah.
And the misdirects they attempt on this page are so funny.
I feel like that's so Russell T Davies to do something like that, where I think he's always really cared about like expanded media, not just in like spin-offs like we were talking about, but like he knows that people will be going on the website, and so okay, let's really drum it up. Like I remember the Who is the Doctor website from the first episode. I remember that being a real life website, and even recently with all the stuff he's doing in Doctor Who magazine, making TARDISodes for the phone. I feel like that is like it's something he was really interested in, and I think that really, it just bodes up like much more hype for the finale. I remember going on that website well.
Some really cool theories, like misdirects that the BBC throws to the fans, are pretty good. It's like, you know, okay, if the Bad Wolf is a person, this is verbatim. What are Mickey's motivations, for instance? What happened to Captain Jack during the 2 missing years of his life? What's so special about Rose that the Doctor wants to travel with her? And what is Jackie Tyler really worried about?
I think that the Captain Jack one would have been really good because they never really, like, you have to remind me, maybe there wasn't Torchwood, but there was never really a resolution to him having his memory stolen. And I can see that being a more obvious thing, being like the Bad Wolf's person, it's Jack and blah, blah, blah. But like, that's a really interesting misdirect. I think that would have convinced me at the time.
Yeah. Another great one as well. It said, could the bad wolf in fact be Adam? When he left the Doctor, he took with him the knowledge of all of human history for the next 200,000 years. If he isn't directly involved with the bad wolf, no, me neither. The final theory they have on the page, which is pretty good, is it a mistake to think it's a person? Perhaps it's an object, a unique one. We know that the TARDIS can alter Rose and the Doctor's perception of the world so they can understand alien languages. Perhaps it's responsible for placing clues about Bad Wolf around them. If so, why? What is the TARDIS trying to warn them about? So the theory that the TARDIS kind of graffitied itself to make it look graffitied.
I wonder if there are any little hidden robots inside the TARDIS that if the Doctor's not there and the TARDIS physically needs to do something, it can just command these little robots to like get out and spray paint it or graffiti, you know, like how the ground outside of the Powell estate has all got the big yellow bad wolf on it and stuff. Like they've just got all these little like Gallifreyan robots like zizzing around, graffitiing bad wolf everywhere.
This theory's even better than that because it's kind of saying that they're not even really there. It's all a perception filter. The TARDIS is just manipulating the way they're seeing the world to look like there's warnings laid everywhere.
That poor kid then that the Doctor's making him wash off the bad wolf. He's like, don't do
there's
that again.
There.
And there's nothing.
Don't do that again.
Oh my God, that's so funny. No, I mean, I can completely see that. I think that, yeah, I can completely see it.
Yeah, it's very funny. There's then like a footnote on the website, which is like, there's a quote from Russell T Davies on the resolution page, which is like, Russell just saying like, you haven't solved it yet, by the way, guys. I'm not going to give anything away yet. People got it wrong. And then at the bottom there in italics, it's update. The bad wolf was a message scattered throughout time by Rose Tyler after she absorbed the vortex. Like,
for anyone who missed it.
Update, if you missed it, it was Rose.
Oh
don't worry
my
about
God,
it.
that's so funny. What did you think? Okay, I think that this episode really does stand the test of time. Like I watched this obviously for the rewatch and I loved it as much as I loved it then. How do you find that the pop culture references sort of went aged now? How do you think they've aged?
Well, it's difficult to say because to me they've aged well, but that's what I grew up with. So I don't know if some of them are lost. I think they're still really funny, but then I think, you know what, shows like Stars in Their Eyes, I don't know where I went West Country in that. Shows like Stars in Their Eyes, that's going to be lost on a lot of people now.
I think Big Brother completely kept its relevance. I think The Weakest Link did. At the time, I knew who Trini and Susanna were, but I did not know like what not to wear. That I still don't know what that show is. Stars in the Rise, like lots of the shows they name drop are lost on me still. I don't think it detracts from the episode though. I think you still enjoy the episode as much. One thing that I think is really funny is in the bit where the Doctor says he doesn't pay his TV license and Linda's like, oh my God, you can get executed for that. Everyone in the UK kind of like got the reference, but I was reading earlier, and anyone who's not in the UK, because like TV licensing is completely different internationally, they were all like, what? Like they had no idea what they were talking about. So I think even more so than the actual shows themselves, just how like it's very like UK driven. It's like, oh, you know, this big satellite that controls the news for the whole world. Like it's incredibly British.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think what other references are in there that might have not done so well. A criticism at the time, I think, in the reviews was people thought the references wouldn't have aged very well. And I think it's held up pretty well because I think even if you don't know who Trini and Susanna are, it's good. I don't know that the Anne Robinson joke is as funny if you didn't grow up with her on TV, but it kind of didn't matter because when she was on TV, it was incredibly funny. The Anne Droid joke was very funny.
It was a gag. It was a gag. And I was so pleasantly surprised to see like both for the Anne Droid and then for Big Brother, and to my knowledge as well for Trini and Susanna, like they actually got all of the real life counterparts to voice them in the episode, I think.
Yeah, they did. It's pretty funny, like, in the credits for this, like, Davina McCall's in there, Trini and Susanna are in there, Anne Robinson's in there. It's just so good. It's so good.
It's so, so good. And I mean, I don't know if you listened to About Time podcast, but they recently covered these episodes well, and I think they already sort of covered it. So I don't want to dive into it too much and go listen to their episode. But there are so many fun ideas for what would be games if this was made today. I think Drag Race is a great one. I think The Traitors would be a really, really good game to put in there now. I think Squid Game, that would like be an obvious choice. There are so many game shows now. I mean, especially with streaming and stuff. The Floor is Lava. Did you watch The Floor is Lava on Netflix?
No, I didn't. No.
So it's like, you know, the game The Floor is Lava, they have to stay on top of the objects, but like how you'd play it when you're a kid in your living room and you'd fall on the floor and you're in lava. If they go into the lava, like they're in the lava.
Oh my god.
And they have like a big pool of orange liquid, and when they fall in there they kind of cut, and then they're like, well, they're gone, and you don't see them again. I can see that being one.
Do you remember Jungle Run on CITV? And like the final round of Jungle Run involved them like doing puzzles inside a temple. And if they were too slow to escape and they ran out of time, this like big like stone monkey mouth at the entrance to the cave would shut and it would seal the kids inside. And I really thought that they stayed in there and they died basically. I've just thought,
what is it about kids shows in the mid-noughties? So same with that, same with the Raven. If they were in the final of that and they fell off of the obstacle course, they'd be like disintegrated.
Oh, I thought they were dead. Yeah, and Raven.
Did you ever watch Trapped, where the similar thing, they were in this tower and there's this like gremlin who's watching over the tower, and if they didn't escape, they'd be like, you're trapped. Same thing, they'd be just stuck there for eternity.
Let's discuss the metaphors in this episode. Not so discreetly delivered. The stupid human race stuck indoors, watching telly, desensitized to violence,
sheep.
Unable to go
Mindless
outside
sheep.
because pollution and climate change is so extreme, and either kind of reveling in the violence that's on TV or kind of so comfortable with it that they don't even realize it's wrong anymore.
I mean, this is the thing, like the Doctor, when he's talking to Linda about it, and I think that the whole thing with the episode is it's like, no, the human race aren't meant to be like this. Like, you're meant to have evolved and like something's gone wrong to have you stunted like this. But the parallels are very real to life. Like, people love watching CCTV footage of like horrific car accidents, and they love watching game shows where all those game shows we just said from the noughties where kids are like trapped in castles and stuff. And I think people, really violent video games and stuff, and I think that I can very easily see far in the future when the Doctor's talking to Linda and he's like, what do you do? And she's like, we watch telly. And he's like, is that it? And she's like, well, yeah, like that's what we do. I can very clearly see that as a future for the human race, which is terrifying. It's a bit like WALL-E, like the future of the human race is being built by us right now,
Yeah.
Not to get too meta.
I guess it's a little, it feels like it's maybe a little kind of moral panicky around that time that people thought that, and still do, but especially at that time, everyone thought like, video games make kids violent, and sitting in front of the TV all day was making everyone stupid.
Yeah.
And to some degree, that's true, right? To some degree, there's some truth in like consuming too much media.
There's definitely truth to that. I remember as a kid, I would never be allowed to play anything like Grand Theft Auto, but did you ever play Simpsons Hit and Run?
No, but I would have loved to. That would have made me violent.
Well, I have a vivid memory of playing that, and it was basically Grand Theft Auto with Simpsons characters where you steal cars and you can run people over and stuff. And I remember playing it with my mum, and I would have been like similar age to when this came out, like 7 or 8, and she was like, "You're not going to drive like this when you actually get a car, are you?" And I remember thinking, like, even as a kid, I was like, "Do you really believe that like me playing this video game now is going to lead me in 10 years to be like, oh, let me go hit someone with my car because I saw Homer Simpson doing it 10 years ago."
I like how they illustrated that people were super desensitized to violence in this. So obviously like Sweet Linda with a Y was one of them. The way she describes the shows is really funny. Oh, and stars in their eyes, literally stars in their eyes. If you don't sing, you get blinded.
And the Doctor, he's so like disgusted by all this, and then he's like, oh, do they still have that one where people have to live with a bear? And it's like, oh, bear with me, love that one.
Oh,
like,
I know. And then immediately he pivots to like,
but it's all wrong.
The bit that was quite funny was so Rusty Davies to write a workplace flirty romance into this, where it's all wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, oh, we could be something, maybe, like, oh, nothing's really changed in 200,000 years, people still flirt by the coffee machine. But the bit where it's like, and she whispers in his ear, I don't think she's been human for years. And then it cuts to the most horrifying, wired up, blind slave woman who it turns out has been in there since she was 5. I'm like, that's not funny.
It's horrific. It's like, when did we decide to start using actual people as like the intel processor of a game show? Like,
yeah, and I mean, obviously that's intentional, right, to show like how twisted it is and how comfortable everyone is with, oh, it's just our job, it's just what we do, that's how it is. And the way they talk about her, like she's a difficult boss, even though it's, obviously this like insane, human wired into a machine, like really disturbing.
Like completely, like clearly forced against their will to be doing this and just counting numbers all day and like warning of solar flares, and they're just like, oh, she's not listening. cut some slack.
And what is she like? What is she like?
It's interesting looking into the history of that character, and I think Russell T Davies originally, he was saying that he was thinking of having it as a mad teenager called Edward running the whole game station, and then he was like, no, I don't like that idea, and then it became just like an old man who was in charge of everything, and then it sort of settled on this because he said it wanted it to be more of a like gender neutral performance. You're not looking at it, they do refer to her as her, but you're not watching it as like, okay, here's a specific person that has like a motive. It's like, this is just a shell of a being as a big part of this machine. I think then that when it comes to the reveal of who her masters are, it makes them much more of a gag, because you're like, oh no, she really was just like plucked as a child and forced to do this by these evil beings.
Yeah, she is definitely a victim, easily. I was going to say the controller for me, that character is such a high in this episode. Incredibly freaky. An excellent death scene as well, like when she has this real like glee about I've brought about your destruction, and they have more of a close-up on the extermination than maybe they normally do, but something about the shot of her kind of skull with that inverted Dalek effect is so creepy, and the way she kind of,
it's so creepy.
She holds this open mouth kind of laughing scream for a little longer than they normally do, and it's silent. The kind of sound effect fades a little bit, and then there's no soundtrack, and it's just her kind of slumping to the floor.
I know. I feel like there's so many characters in Doctor Who that aren't, they're not the heroes and they're not the villains. They're just sort of characters in the episode. And I feel like she has so little screen time. Like if you actually added it up, I'm sure it'd be less than 10 minutes. But she has such an arc. It's so interesting. I love the bit where she's sort of trying to warn the Doctor, and then as soon as the solar flare passes, I always sort of read it when I was a kid as like, oh, well, the solar flare's passed, so she can't think of that anymore. She's just focused on the game. But she's aware that the Daleks will see her thoughts and be able to see she's helping the Doctor. And then when she's like, no, my masters, no, I defy you. And she starts warning him where, like giving coordinates as to where they are.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. And then obviously when she dies a few seconds later, it's just harrowing.
Yeah, I missed it on the first watch as well, that was her intention. I had the same thing where I thought she wasn't aware of the Doctor.
Physically couldn't.
Until the flare, and not that she was hiding from the Masters at the time that she could, from the Daleks at the time that she could be seen.
Well, watching it back this time, they can read her thoughts, and so when Elaine the Pain, I'm sorry, I don't know, I don't think she even has a character name. I think it's like Satellite Controller Female or something like that. But when Elaine the Pain starts asking about the Doctor and saying like, who's this man, she's like, he's no one. They're no one. Carry on, because she can't allow herself to think about the Doctor, because if she thinks about him, the Daleks will know he's there. And I think I didn't realise that until this rewatch properly.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even fully realise that until you just said it. And I think even that makes sense with like Archive is out of, what is it? Archive 60 is out of bounds or whatever.
Archive 6 is out of bounds. No one may enter Archive 6.
Yeah, and in a way it's almost like I can't even think about what's in that room. Yeah, that makes sense.
So don't go in there. Yeah,
that's a fun freaky twist. I didn't really even think about that, but yeah, really scary. Like all those like wires going into her back, and even the way her hair is done, and the like really pale makeup, and the contact lenses, and
glow in the dark eyes.
Yeah, really scary. Really scary.
I think, going on from that, I think that the Daleks is a villain. I think she's a great pawn in making them a really scary villain. And we touched on it in the episode when we looked over at the Dalek episode. But I think that Series 1 did a real good job of making the Daleks menacing. And I definitely think, like, as the series went on, they were arguably overused. I don't know if that was because of some contractual obligation to have them in every season or not, but they definitely became overused, and they weren't scary. They're not scary villains anymore, I don't find. I really hope that when they are reintroduced, they do become a more harrowing, scary villain. Because of that episode, and because of how you saw they treated the Controller and what they did, when Rose wakes up on their spaceship, and you see, like, from the Dalek perspective come up to her, and I've seen this episode a million times, but I genuinely felt her fear where she's like, you can't, you're dead. And then when they finally pan away to that shot and you see there's 8 Daleks, but then you pan further back and you actually see there's a whole spaceship of them. And then you pan further back and there's thousands of spaceships of them. You're like, oh my God, we could barely handle one. How are we going to handle an army?
Yeah, I guess so. I probably would have found it scary at the time. I definitely remember finding the single Dalek frightening on its own, chasing everyone down the corridors, and when Rose is stuck on the wrong side of that that door and the Daleks coming up to her. I remember that was quite scary. I think on this one, when the numbers get ridiculous, you know that the solution is going to have to be ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true.
And so on some level, for me, the threat is almost lessened because you can't, because the solution's going to have to be so massive that it's almost not worth worrying about. Do you know what I mean? On some level, I think...
No, I completely see what you mean.
It's interesting for me as well. I mean, I do think they did an excellent job of building up the Dalek threat, right? Because we saw, like, what can one Dalek do? It could wipe out the planet and conquer everything. What could all these Daleks do? And we do see what they can do. They go and they decimate all the continents. You can see it on a map. Like, they swoop down to Earth and they start just killing people en masse. And that's really horrible and really scary. And I think Linda can like hear screams coming through the broadcast or something, and that might be in the second part, actually, not in this one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Controversial take. Really controversial take. Going into series 14, I don't know that I need the Daleks to be scary. And this is my personal opinion, just my personal opinion, but I don't need the Daleks to be scary. I enjoy looking at kind of the psyche of the Daleks.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy when we get kind of nibbles of bits like we did in Asylum of the Daleks. Like, does it surprise you?
You're such an Asylum supporter.
I'm such an Asylum lover. No one agrees with me, but
it's so funny.
Does it surprise you to know that Daleks have a concept of beauty? And that's like why they can't destroy the Asylum, is because they think hate is so beautiful that they can't kill all those evil Daleks. And I like in The Magician's Apprentice when Clara gets stuck inside a Dalek casing and she tries to say certain words and it translates them for her, and she tries to say to the Doctor, like, I would never hurt you, I love you. And it changes it into like, you are my enemy, exterminate. And like that kind of thing is quite fun. Like how like Daleks can never die, like they just become like flesh in the sewers, and like I love all of that like horrible Dalek lore. I don't know if I need them to be scary as much as I just like to almost like, I like to see them strategize, I like to see them go sadistic, I like to see what's going on in their insane little metal casings. I like to see them be silly as well. I like to see them beef with Cybermen.
Yeah, no, I mean, oh god, no, I mean, we'll get to it, but I definitely think that was like one of the best Dalek scenes ever when they are intentionally silly. I want there to be fear around Daleks. I don't, maybe not necessarily scary, because I completely agree with everything you're saying about like, I love seeing more about Dalek lore. I loved when we got to see Skaro. I do think though, in the latter half of New Who, we've not had any real Dalek story that has, in my opinion, I know that you obviously love Asylum and you love The Magician's Apprentice and stuff. I think that often the Daleks kind of get hobbled together into a story. So I think both Asylum and then The Witch's Familiar and The Magician's Apprentice both sort of fall victim to, let's hobble all these different Daleks together and we'll make a story out of it. And I think that Skaro was so beautifully done. I loved how they animated Skaro in that story. I mean, I know we're talking about Bad Wolf here, but it felt like a real homage to the old classic Skaro sets from the 60s. But I think that they just haven't slapped like they have here. I think that more so than being scary, I want them to feel like a threat. I think that often now Daleks are this silly little thing that the Doctor falls into. Like, I don't really felt like there was much threat in, say, Resolution of the Daleks, and the Doctor's just like, come on everyone, get in my TARDIS. Like, I feel like, get in the TARDIS. And like, I feel like there's no real threat to them. And like, you know, in the time of the Doctor when the Dalek is like, I have a Dalek eye stalk to prove I'm a threat, and then womp he's on a Dalek spaceship. Or in the beginning of Peter Capaldi's era with Bill, he like takes her to quickly see it one Dalek and then like runs away.
And it's like, whoops, it's a Dalek, off we pop. Yeah.
I feel like they've lost their threat, and I think they keep telling us as the audience, like, the Daleks are a threat, like, oh my god, they're the most evil beings in the galaxy, and I'm like, well, you're telling me they're a threat, but then you're clearly not threatened by them. And I feel like in this series and in this finale, I really felt like they were threat. I don't necessarily maybe think they were as scary as I picked up that they were. Maybe I'm changing my take halfway through, but go with me. I think that they were a real threat. And I think then when the Daleks come back with the Genesis arc, I think they're a threat. And I think realizing they're in 1930 New York, they're a threat. And then when they come in the Series 4 finale, they're a threat. And I feel like that's what's been lost with the Daleks. And that's what I'd like to see.
I mean, I'll disagree with you on Series 4 Daleks. They had the most ridiculous death of all. As immaculate as the Series 4 finale is, they're ultimately defeated
Help
by...
me.
Yeah.
Help
They're
me.
defeated by Donna with a keypad, who taps the buttons in the right order and they all blow up. Like, I mean, they
Okay, that's very fair. That's very fair.
they are nerfed to hell in the series 4 finale. So I really honestly feel that from this point on, the Daleks have lost their scare. Like, they had their scare maybe for the Dalek episode, and from here on, the more of them you chuck at it, the kind of less threatening they get. I think it might be Stephen Moffat who said the Daleks are like the most reliably defeated villain, in that every single time they show up, they are defeated. Every time. And there was one Dalek, I think, in Journey's End, or maybe the episode prior, who shot the Doctor successfully. And he is killed like seconds later.
True.
And that's it. Like, it never works out. And then the Doctor survives with the same body anyway. So it's rarely a consequence for a Dalek.
I think what they need to bring more of is little things like at the beginning of Asylum of the Daleks, when they have that sort of offhanded dialogue about the Dalek concentration camps. Not that I'm saying I want, too much.
You want concentration camps on TV? Wow.
No, I'm not saying that. I don't put those words in my mouth. I want there to be more Dalek lore, which I think we get. I think we're getting a lot of that. I think things like in the evolution of the Daleks, when you see how Dalek Sec thinks they should evolve, and the dilemma between quote unquote pure Daleks and this Dalek who's willing to change. I think that poses really interesting storylines. And I think in these episodes, we'll talk about it next week, but with the Emperor and his whole mentality about what he is and what the Daleks are, that's what I find interesting, seeing what the Daleks think of themselves and how they fit into the universe. I think that can also be where the threat comes.
Yeah, and these ones, I guess, are meant to be extra threatening because they are insane Daleks, because they're not Daleks. They are grown from humans. They are impure and they resent their own flesh. So they are kind of also all going a bit mad.
Yeah.
So they are kind of all insane cultists who know that they're not really Daleks either. So there's levels to it in this, which is excellent as well. And there's kind of a disgusting, sickness to these Daleks. And there's that point where in the next episode, the Doctor retreats into the TARDIS and can hear them all kind of bleating exterminate outside. And he's almost just a bit he's a bit depressed by it, really. He's a bit like, oh hell.
Exactly.
So, yeah. One thing I loved about this episode was Jack the hero. Jack, the competent, useful hero who, and we've said this before, has an interesting take on the universe, from being a time agent, from being an experienced soldier, from having traveled to different places in time and space. He's got a unique... He adds a unique dimension to this TARDIS trio, which I really like.
I like how the Doctor, in this episode and even more so in the next episode, sees him as an equal, certainly off screen, because we didn't see it happen. He gave Jack a TARDIS key, and as we saw in Boomtown, Jack's working on the TARDIS. He has his own TARDIS key. I think we see more in later seasons, the Doctor does really understand Jack, and that kind of scares them because they know what Jack's capable of. And I think that might be why after this season, the Doctor tries to distance himself from Jack. But I think that I really like how Jack is seen to be competent, knowledgeable, and capable in this series, and then certainly in this finale.
Yeah, and I noticed there was something as well. When they all storm floor 500, the Doctor doesn't call him Jack, he calls him Captain. And we said before that we think the Doctor probably doesn't like that Jack brings out the soldier in him. And I guess at this point it doesn't matter. He thinks Rose is dead and he's going ham.
Yeah.
He's got no one to impress at this point, right? And we really see that kind of come out. There's one bit though where he stays Doctor and he goes, "Oh, don't be so thick," as if I was going to shoot.
Yeah, for sure. I think that he kind of, especially in the bit where he thinks Rose is dead, I think that he gets on really well with Jack and he trusts him so much because it's very easy, because the Time War was so recent for the Doctor, for him to slip back into that military thing. And when Rose isn't there, he kind of can let his guard down a bit. And I think that's why he calls him Captain when he's talking to him in this scene. I think that when he's like, "Let's do it," he doesn't even discuss the plan with Jack, he just knows what the plan's going to be, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the "let's do it" bit was funny.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about the "let's do it" thing. I think I liked it.
Doesn't the Doctor maybe I'm misremembering, I don't think he snaps his neck or something, but doesn't he fully push him against a wall and punch him or something, the guard?
Yeah, a guard approaches him and he kind of just flings him. He doesn't really kind of
he's
injure
too
him
lanky
too badly,
for
but
that.
it's definitely... It's definitely implied he knocks him out, which is consistent with canon because, well, there's no canon. But the Doctor's been an incredibly violent man in the past, as we alluded to in previous episodes. I mean, he's thrown guys
Baths
into
of
acid.
acid.
He's done karate. The fourth Doctor snapped some guy's neck. I mean, he's fired guns before. It really wasn't such a big deal, I don't think, pre-Time War that the Doctor was violent now and then.
I think that, like, from a story-wise, it's like, oh no, I'm not that man. I'm the man that helps people. But then from a real-world perspective, it's probably just that more violence was allowed on TV then.
Yeah. Let's go into fun facts. I would love to hear some of yours, but I've also brought one or two with me.
Gorgeous. Well, let's hear some of yours.
One thing that's not so much a fun fact as much as an Easter egg is there are lots of hints throughout this episode that the Daleks are going to be the big bad at the end. It was kind of spoiled because I think the Next Time preview from Boomtown did show the Daleks, and so that slightly spoiled the reveal. However, within this episode, there are some really good subtle hints. One is obviously the Anne Droid's laser beam was a bit of a giveaway. Another one, I think there was another laser beam. Tree and Susanna might have had one as well. The disintegrator ray as well was quite Dalek-esque.
It does look very exterminatory.
Very similar sound effects happening there as well. One very subtle hint is that on the decor of the Big Brother house, some of the kind of canvases, the art prints, they have the kind of Dalek bump sensor globes on the walls decorating the Big Brother house. Yeah, very difficult to spot. You wouldn't see it on first watch, but if you pause, you can see that it is actually hidden there. And there's actually, I think, also a painting somewhere in there of a wolf as well, with a painting of a blonde woman above that. So there's a few little hints inside the house too.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I thought was really funny is originally the production team intended to show Jack's naked bum in the scene where he gets his clothes disintegrated for the first time. And they actually filmed it because it doesn't take two brain cells to realise that John Barrowman would be game for that. But anyway, they originally were hoping to show that. And it was the only time that the BBC editorial policy department stepped in and they vetoed it. It was the only time in this whole series that they actually stepped in to be like, no, we're not doing this on primetime TV.
We're not doing that. I remember that from the time. I don't know if it was in the confidential episode, but I do remember there was a discussion had about, like, is it really nudity, like a man's bum? Like, how bad is that?
We see worse.
Is it that explicit? We've seen far worse.
Oh, for sure. We've seen worse.
One really funny fact is that according to the DVD commentary for the episode, the music heard when the Dalek fleet is revealed, which I think is just Murray's Dalek theme, is a chorus singing "What is happening?" So it's sung in Hebrew, and it's like the apparently that is what is happening, which
it feels a lot less threatening when it's just a choir. I can imagine it's a load of people on Earth looking up and being like, "What is happening? What is happening?"
I love it so much. Yeah, so apparently that's what that is.
That's interesting. Well, talking earlier about Elaine the Pain, Nisha Nayar, who's the actress that plays the female programmer in this episode, she previously appeared as an uncredited Red Kang extra in the 1987 classic episode of Doctor Who titled Paradise Towers, which makes her the second actor to appear in both the classic and new series of Doctor Who, second only to William Thomas's appearance in Boomtown.
Oh.
There you go.
One final fact from me is that according to Doctor Who Confidential, even though Anne Robinson was invited to voice the android, they didn't think she would say yes. So they got a celebrity voice impersonator who had already been hired to record the lines when Anne Robinson said yes.
So they just fully were like, oh, we'll ask her, but she won't do it.
The voice was so good, though. Like, so you are unemployed. And her voice translates incredibly well through a modulator.
Oh my God, that line, they're like, so Rose, do you have a job? And then she's like, oh no, I'm a bit of a traveller. And she goes, so you are unemployed and yet you still have enough money to buy peroxide. When I was a kid, I remember I was like, what's peroxide? And then I watched it back and I was like, ooh, what a read.
Ooh, goop, goop, goop. If you watch Anne Robinson in The Weakest Link, I don't think I realised growing up that it was a character that she was doing.
Oh, me neither.
And just genuinely thought she was an unpleasant, cruel woman that we all watched and didn't get that was a thing. But she plays it very well.
one day I really want us to do an episode where we look back on the Doctor Who Weakest Link episode from, I think it was like 2006 or maybe 7. I know David Tennant was on it. The real life Weakest Link. It's so funny. It's so good.
It is.
I think K9 is a contestant on it.
He is. The Weakest Link is such a comforting piece of TV to me. Like, when I think back now to like Anne Robinson's voice on that show and the lights and the music and everything, it's such.
I think it was like Thursday evenings or something.
Yeah, and it's such memories of like my grandparents being down. Like, that's the sort of thing I would want to watch. You know what I mean? That's such.
Oh, completely. We used to go to. I'm pretty sure it was on Thursdays, and we used to always go around my dad's parents, my grandparents, on a Thursday. We would always my nan would make us like a roast, and then we'd watch The Simpsons and The Weakest Link, and that it's a very comforting memory.
Since we say this podcast is about us and our childhood and how it relates to our queer existence, I feel I need to throw in another fun fact, which is about me, which is that when this episode came out, there's a scene where the Doctor looks out upon kind of the smoggy earth that he's wrecked and given 100 years of misery by turning off all the news. And he says, "Oh, Matt, I made this world." And my mum, who hadn't been listening, my Christian mother who had not been listening, said, "Well, you know that's not true, don't you? You know God made the world." And I was like,
oh my God.
And
that's so funny.
It took me a long time, because I remember when I first watched the episode, I didn't understand the line. I didn't make the connection between the two episodes. So I was like, huh? And so I was like, wait, what? Like, did he make the
What
world?
did you do, Doctor? Because of Big Brother?
He what? Like, wait, what? So anyway, I clearly didn't follow. She didn't follow.
That's so funny. Oh my God. I love that. God bless your mum. Well, rolling on from fun facts, I think it's time for our reoccurring segment. Alasdair, are you ready for camp or damp?
Yes, I'm ready. Throw them at me.
We're going to flip the script and I'm going to ask you this week. Alasdair, you have 3 things. Tell me, are they camp or are they damp?
Oh.
The Anne Droid, camp or damp?
This is a very easy one. Not only the voice, not only Anne actually doing it herself, but also the kind of neat orange haircut made out of metal on its little head. The android's camp.
It's so camp. I mean, you know that I love collecting Doctor Who stuff, and during lockdown, I sadly don't have it anymore, but I collected quite a few of the figurine collection figures. I'm not going to get all of them because there's hundreds, but I was like, I'll choose my few favourite, and I got the Beast because it was really big and I loved it. I got a Draconian, and I got the Android because I was like, she is
my
camp personified, honey.
I did not know there was an Android figurine until I've just Googled it, and I need this. I'm not kidding. I require
I know that you love your like robotic figurines, your non-human. I actually think you need the Android figurine. We'll loop ourselves back around to that. Number 2 on Camp or Damp, Alasdair. Ladies, your viewing figures just went up. Camp or damp?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this one's actually got a bit icky with time.
It did, didn't it?
This one was funny then and has aged badly, and now it's not funny anymore. So I'm afraid this one's damp.
It was camp, and as time is a cruel mistress and does so with the many things, it became damp. Number 3, Stars in Their Eyes. Literally stars in their eyes.
Stars in Their Eyes, the TV show where they blind people, is camp. Sorry.
Camp. It's camp. That takes us swiftly into the parting of the ways, which we'll be looking at next week.
I really can't believe that we've made it to the finale. I can't believe it took us this long as well, that we're on episode 17. And I can't believe that our dear listeners have made it along as well.
I know. I mean, we're so nearly there. We're going to look at the parting of the ways next week, and then we're going to do a sort of a series 1 in review episode where we look back on the whole series, and we look back on our first series of the podcast. I'm so excited that we've nearly made it. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Wholala Doctor Who Podcast. As always, you can keep the conversation going on our Twitter and Instagram, both at Wholala Pod, and you can also look back on old episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, also at Wholala Pod.
Oh, thank you guys. Yes, please do get in touch. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Share your memories with us from June 2005, if you have any.
Well, it was getting towards my 7th birthday, maybe 8th birthday. It was a very exciting time.
Oh, such an exciting time.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.